The other fantasy cheat code component here is volume. Volume matters a lot. We want quarterbacks who are dropping back a lot, and that's exactly what Jayden Daniels is going to be doing in this Cliff Kingsbury offense. It's such a cheat code that Jayden Daniels doesn't even need to be good. So long as he's dropping back a lot and running a lot, that's all that you really need from a fantasy quarterback. But what I love most about him is I think he's good. I think the dude won a Heisman last year, broke a bunch of records. I think he is an amazing pick at his current QB 11 ADP. QB 11 is an insane value for Jayden Daniels. I would take him multiple rounds earlier. What? What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Okay, the first quarterback we're talking about is Joe Burrow. People are forgetting just how badly he was banged up to start last season, but Brian Callahan, former OC, current Titans head coach, reminded us multiple times this offseason just how badly he was banged up to start the year, just how much that constrained the offense, shrunk the playbook, where basically the team had to play exclusively out of shotgun. They had to get the ball out as quickly as possible. If we just throw out those first 4 games and then the final game of the year where he suffered that wrist injury, then he averages 23.3 fantasy points per game over his last 25 games. What does that mean? Only one other quarterback averages more over their last 25 games, and that's Josh Allen, who goes multiple rounds earlier. If you factor in the injury, he's hit at least 20.5 fantasy points per game in each of the last 3 seasons, a feat accomplished only by Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. Right now, Joe Burrow is priced as the QB7 in underdog drafts. That makes absolutely no sense. Again, we're talking about a player who over the last 25 healthy games, it was Josh Allen and him, and then Jalen Hurts a distant third. And those 2 quarterbacks are going multiple rounds earlier. And that wrist injury, don't worry about that wrist injury. Our guy, Edwin Porras, injury expert over at FantasyPoints.com, is not concerned in the slightest. And in fact, this might be the first full offseason of Joe Burrow's career. When he came into the league as a rookie in 2020, his training camp was shortened due to COVID. 2021 was the ACL recovery. 2022 was the appendectomy. 2023, calf injury. 2024, wrist surgery, but no throwing restrictions. Again, for a player, ranks behind only Josh Allen over his last 25 healthy games. And don't forget, Jamar Chase missed plenty of time. T. Higgins missed plenty of time. But T. Higgins has already signed his franchise tag. They drafted a rookie wide receiver I love. Joe Burrow as the QB7 by ADP makes absolutely no sense. The next quarterback on our list, and he alongside Joe Burrow, are the 2 quarterbacks I would put in the must-draft territory. The second quarterback is Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels averaged 40 fantasy points per game in his Heisman-winning 2023 season. That ranks second most of any Power 5 quarterback since at least 2016. He also averaged 1.20 fantasy points per dropback, which ranks second best of any quarterback since 2014. Elite company there. But it's not just my conviction in the player. It's also the landing spot. He joins Cliff Kingsbury's offense, which when he was at Arizona, ranked first in situation neutral pace of play, first in no huddle rate, 4th in dropbacks per game. And we know Kingsbury isn't afraid to let his quarterback run wild. Kyler Murray in 2020 averaged 8.3 rushing attempts per game, 25.8 fantasy points per game. When it comes to fantasy cheat codes we need to exploit, Jayden Daniels offers 2 of them. One, he runs. We know running for a quarterback is a massive cheat code in fantasy where 100 yards and a touchdown through the air is equivalent to 20 yards and a touchdown on the ground. The other fantasy cheat code component here is volume. Volume matters a lot. We want quarterbacks who are dropping back a lot, and that's exactly what Jayden Daniels is going to be doing in this Cliff Kingsbury offense. It's such a cheat code that Jayden Daniels doesn't even need to be good. So long as he's dropping back a lot and running a lot, that's all that you really need from a fantasy quarterback. But what I love most about him is I think he's good. I think the dude won a Heisman last year, broke a bunch of records. I think he is an amazing pick at his current QB 11 ADP. QB 11 is an insane value for Jayden Daniels. I would take him multiple rounds earlier. How convicted am I on Jayden Daniels? He is my Exodia quarterback. Look at the track record of my Exodia must draft quarterbacks, where basically you draft him, you log out. That's all you ever need at the position. Single best value, league winning potential. My bet is on Jayden Daniels. Track record's really good, except for last year, Anthony Richardson did not work out, but primarily due to injury. But look at where Anthony Richardson is right now. We know it was a good process pick because he jumped from QB 11 ADP last year to QB 5 this year, despite only playing in 2 full games. Basically, drafting Jayden Daniels is a free reroll of that same bet, and I might like him even more. And I wouldn't be shocked if Jayden Daniels outscores Richardson this year, despite a much cheaper ADP. But this brings us back to our next value quarterback. He isn't must draft like Burrow and Jayden Daniels, but he is a tremendous value. And that's my guy, Anthony Richardson, who I was all over last year. One of the most predictive metrics we have at the fantasy position is fantasy points per dropback. And well, Richardson's 0.76 not only led all quarterbacks, but ranked best of any quarterback since Lamar Jackson's record-breaking 2019. If only looking at fantasy points per 4 full quarters instead of fantasy points per game, then Anthony Richardson would have had the best quarterback season ever. 29.2 fantasy points per 4 full quarters, well above Josh Allen at 24.2. Obviously, the upside is insane. Next on our list is Dak Prescott. You may remember from last season, Dallas shifted to a far more pass-heavy approach after their Week 7 bye. They were the most pass-heavy offense in football, measured by pass rate over expectation. Before their bye, they were the 24th most pass-heavy offense in football. So from Week 8 on, Dak Prescott averaged 24 fantasy points per game. That ranks second most behind only Josh Allen. And that was 1.8 more fantasy points per game than MVP winner Lamar Jackson. Obviously, volume played a big role, but maybe not as much as you would think. He ranked 5th best in fantasy points per dropback after the bye. And why wouldn't we think that good volume is going to continue? They replaced Tony Pollard with an even dustier Ezekiel Elliott, with only Rico Dowdle as his competition. Dak Prescott led the league in touchdowns last year. He was the QB2 behind only Josh Allen after the team's Week 7 bye. And for some reason, he's very affordable. Only the QB9 on Underdog, clear value. Next on our list is Jordan Love, who's available as just the QB10 on Underdog. That's in spite of the fact that he ranked 5th among all quarterbacks in fantasy points per start last season. And that's across the full season. But he was a player who got a lot better as he grew in experience, which is not too surprising for a player who was basically just a rookie last year. He hit at least 17.5 fantasy points in 8 of his last 9 games, averaging 21.2. That was despite not having Christian Watson and Luke Musgrave for the near entirety of that stretch. Really, really impressive in the second half last year. Look at all these stats from Week 11 on. First in total touchdowns, first in total passing yards, first in EPA per attempt, and the list goes on and on. He finished 5th in fantasy points per start last season. So why do we think he's going to regress when he only got better as the season went on, when his league's youngest receiving core also gained an extra year of experience, and when he has the position's most improved strength of schedule? The next player on our list is Will Levis, priced as the QB 24 on Underdog. And really, this is just for best ball leagues, but he is a tremendous value in best ball right now. Why? Primarily because he was going from one of the top 5 most run-heavy offenses in football to one of the top 5 most pass-heavy offenses with Brian Callahan and the Tennessee Titans, who also just added Calvin Ridley while also waving goodbye to Derrick Henry. And why is he a particularly good pick for best ball? Well, because he's basically like if Jameis Winston was on steroids and also a little drunk. What does that mean? Basically, an insanely high turnover worthy throw rate, an insanely high hero throw rate, which marks an incredibly skilled throw. Wild range of outcomes from Will Levis on a per throw basis, wild range of outcomes for season-long fantasy. That's exactly what you want to lean into in best ball, where you get none of the bad and all of the good. Will Levis, really strong value, currently priced as the QB 24 in best ball. And the last quarterback we'll be talking about is Bo Nix, priced so cheaply as just the QB 31 on Underdog. Doesn't have the upside in a typical redraft start sit league, but tremendous value in best ball. He's an easy pick just because, well, he's the cheapest, nearly guaranteed starter available in drafts. Easy to hammer him as your QB3 in best ball. But I found myself making a few arguments above that. Basically, you're getting a discount on him right now because everyone thinks he stinks. Maybe he does, but there's some analytical arguments that maybe that's wrong. Bo Nix averaged more fantasy points per dropback in 2022 and 2023 than Caleb Williams, JJ McCarthy, Drake May, or Michael Penix ever had in any season of their college careers. Bo Nix gets knocked for being just a weak arm check down Charlie, but his numbers really aren't that dissimilar to Patrick Mahomes last season or even Patrick Mahomes in college. And by touchdown to interception ratio, his 2023 season was basically impossible. That's how good it was. And Sean Payton loves him. Adam Schefter reported that Sean Payton feels as strongly about Bo Nix as he did about Patrick Mahomes, a player he famously tried to trade up for when he was coming into the draft. And why wouldn't he? He gets the ball out quickly. He's hyper accurate to the short to intermediate levels of the field. He's a brilliant, quick-minded processor. What do those things describe to you? To me, it sounds like Drew Brees, or it sounds like the ultimate Sean Payton quarterback. But the key point here is even if he sucks, I don't think it really matters because that's how good Sean Payton is for fantasy. Maybe you think he's an overrated NFL head coach, but he has a long track record of being awesome for fantasy. Since 2018, look at all the quarterbacks, mediocre to sub-mediocre quarterbacks who were putting up low-end QB1 numbers. Taysom Hill, 20.5 fantasy points per start. A 40-year-old Drew Brees, 19.8. Russell Wilson, who was washed 3 years ago, 18. Trevor Siemian, 18. Jameis Winston, 17.2. Teddy Bridgewater, 17.1. The bottom line is there's minimal risk of this player getting benched. Worst case scenario, he's a productive starter with a high floor, but there might be more ceiling than people are willing to admit. If you're in a fantasy draft, particularly a best ball draft, you want to be strategizing, planning around these quarterbacks, particularly my top two must draft quarterbacks.